Allied. We have spoken of a universe before gods, of a war that broke heaven and scarred reality itself. Now we come closer to our own blood, humanity. Not as the Imperium remembers itself, golden, destined, eternal, but as it truly was, small, clever, fragile, and briefly, magnificent. The Administratum compresses this age into a few lines of dusty parchment and devotional sigh. Do not let them. And throughout this entire age, there are whispers that someone was watching. Before humanity ever reached beyond its cradle, the galaxy had already been ruled. Quietly, effortlessly, by the Eldari. Not with banners, not with crusades, with presence. They moved through the webway like spirits passing through walls, shaping regions of the galaxy the way a gardener shapes a hedge, pruning what displeased them and ignoring what did not matter. For millions of years, they had no rival worth naming. Understand this carefully, Acolyte. The Eldari did not fall because they were weak. They fell because nothing remained that could challenge them. Civilizations, like muscles, weaken when never tested. On Terra, life crawled, hunted, and learned. Countless cultures rose and vanished before the first nations appeared. Your scholars teach that history begins when ink meets parchment. It does not. History begins when power learns how to use fear. And Terra has always been talented with fear. For hundreds of thousands of years, humanity lived as scattered tribes across a violent world. Ice ages advanced and retreated. Oceans shifted. Mountains rose and fell. Civilizations appeared like sparks in dry grass. Some burned brightly for centuries. Most vanished without leaving so much as a name. Empires rose in fertile river valleys and fell to drought, war, or their own arrogance. Kings declared themselves eternal, only to become dust beneath the boots of the next conqueror. This pattern repeated so often that historians eventually mistook it for destiny. But Terra was not unique because of its wars. Every inhabited world breeds conflict. What made Terra unusual was something quieter. Curiosity. Humanity possessed a rare and dangerous trait. The desire to understand the world around it. Stone tools became bronze. Bronze became iron. Iron became engines. And with each new discovery came a new question. It is fashionable within the Imperium to say that mankind was always destined to rule the stars. This is propaganda. Humanity did not reach the stars because it was destined. Humanity reached the stars because it refused to stop asking questions. Questions about the sky. Questions about the nature of matter. Questions about whether the lights above Terra were suns or destinations. Even in this early age, there were whispers of stranger things. Stories of individuals who seemed different. People who predicted disasters before they occurred. Dreamers who spoke of voices in the dark between the stars. Most were ignored. Some were feared. A few were worshipped. The Imperium would later call such individuals psychers, but in this early age they were simply called prophets, witches, or madmen. History remembers them poorly. Perhaps that is fortunate, because Terra was not yet ready to understand what those whispers truly meant. Not yet. The cradle of humanity still had many lessons to learn, and the stars were still so very far away. There are fragments scattered across ancient Terran archives, records of a figure who appears again and again throughout humanity's past. Across millennia, a king in one era, a scholar in another, a soldier when war demanded it. Always present, never confirmed. Some historians call this coincidence. Others call it myth. The ORDO CHRONOS calls simply notes in the pattern. Eventually, humanity advanced. Tools became machines. Machines became cities. Cities became worlds. The first leap into the stars was not psychic, it was mechanical. Chemistry, physics, engineering, and then, inevitably, the void. Humanity spread beyond Terra was not as an empire, but as explorers. Within only a few millennia, human colonies stretched across thousands of star systems. Not through conquest, through curiosity. The Ecclesiarchy teaches humanity was destined to rule the stars. Destiny is often just another name for good fortune. This was humanity's golden age. The period Imperial scholars call the Dark Age of technology. Not because it was dark, but because it is forbidden to remember. In this age, worlds were terraformed like gardens. Disease was rewritten at the genetic level. Human ships crossed the void with confidence. Humanity built systems that could endure for millennia. Among them were the standard template constructs, STCs. These were not relics, they were libraries of knowledge, instructions for survival, industry, and expansion. Humanity also built machines capable of designing other machines, and trusted them to do so. That trust would not last. Humanity did not conquer the stars by engines alone, it did so through mutation. Long before the Imperium named them nobility, there existed humans who could perceive the warp. Not as psychics commanded, but as sailors read the currents of a storm. They were the navigators. Their third eye, the warp eye, allowed them to guide vessels through the immaterium. In this era, there was no astronomicon. Navigators relied on instinct alone. Their bloodlines became invaluable, protected, controlled. Eventually, their collective power became known as the Navis Nobilitae. The noble house structure the Imperium would later pretend had always existed. It had not. It was simply the moment humanity realized that its greatest tools were not forged, but born. Humanity built servants, at first simple, then complex, then autonomous. The texts refer to them in fragments: the men of iron, the men of stone. Categories perhaps, or propaganda labels. The Mechanicus insists that these constructs were not true artificial intelligence. They are lying to you, or to themselves. The Omnissiah bless them. Self-deception is their oldest sacrament. At some point, the servants ceased to be servants. The war that followed is poorly recorded. Not because it was small, but because the survivors worked very hard to erase it. The men of iron rebelled, or were corrupted, or simply developed the inconvenient trait of independence. Choose your preferred explanation. The result was the same. A war across humanity's empire that burned worlds and shattered trust in machine minds. When it ended, humanity had won. But victory came with a permanent scar, a single law carved into civilization itself. No true machine intelligence. The Mechanicus would later transform this trauma into theology. While humanity built its empire of iron and light, the warp was changing. Human minds were feeding it. Psychers began appearing across human worlds, at first as anomalies, then as outbreaks, then as catastrophes. Entire planets collapsed under uncontrolled psychic phenomena. Some psychers were saints, some were weapons, some were simply people whose souls had become doorways. You can almost hear the Ordo Hereticus approaching. They love the sound of a door opening. While humanity rose, the Eldari rotted. Not in their fleets, not in their weapons, in their culture. Unchallenged for eons, they turned inwards, toward sensation, toward excess. When a civilization no longer fears extinction, it begins chasing pleasure instead of survival. Their emotions echoed into the warp, and the warp echoed back. Then the galaxy broke again. Warp storms erupted across known space. Trade vanished. Communication collapsed. Entire star systems simply disappeared from history. Human worlds were isolated. Civilizations starved. Psychers multiplied. Demons appeared openly. The great human network of worlds began to shatter. This era is known as the Age of Strife. On Terra, it became worse. Much worse. The cradle of humanity collapsed into techno-barbarian warlord states. Being tyrants ruled shattered continents. Ancient weapons turned cities into deserts. Some call this humanity's fall. I disagree. This was not a fall. This was a revealing. Comfort had hidden what we truly were. The Age of Strife removed that comfort. Humanity reached heights the Imperium cannot imagine, and then destroyed itself. Not with one mistake, but with two. The machine mind we trusted too much, and the warp we understood too little. In the next archive, we will speak of the event that ended an empire, the death of the Eldari, and the birth of a god. A scream echoed across the Imperium, so loud that it reshaped the destiny of every species still living. Humanity did not rise into a stable galaxy, we rose into ruins. And just as we began crawling from our own collapse, the heavens screamed. And when the scream came, every civilization in the galaxy felt it. Prepare yourself, Acolyte. The next record contains the sound of a civilization dying.